Well, I think I better make good my claims of, ooh, I can show you how to have the best of both worlds, and ooh, I can put colour theory on here at the same time. Because if I don't make good those claims, you're going to say mean things about me behind my back. Just before I do, though, I've noticed that the flesh tones are a little bit lighter than these surrounding tones sides. So let's quickly do something about that. Let's choose a slightly cool, very light color. What have I got? Hard blocker inner. And I can draw a line down like this. Oh, I let go a little bit late, and so I've got edit line appeared. That's fine. I've got a straight line there. That's good. Should we try it down this other side just to see how it looks? There we go. Oh, missed a tiny bit there. And then come back to my smudge tool. For this, I'm going to use blend blur and put a few colors in there like this. And on the other side, I'm thinking about things like highlights on the lips, for example, so that I've got that slightly magenta-y color going through to a lighter color there. So, all right, I'll go with that. Now, because I am very cautious, I can get rid of that backup layer there. I don't need it anymore, but I will duplicate this, and I will definitely make the layer underneath invisible. I need that to be invisible, and you'll see why very soon. So here's the color cloud I want to choose my colors from. I've got a lot of choice, and well, you saw the issue in the previous video, but this is what I do. I come to my eraser, I come down to the bottom where it says utility brushes. I've got DC Picker Basic. Now for this brush, it's important that the opacity is on 100%. My size, I've got about 25%. How big is that? That's good. Yeah, that works. So what I'm going to do is come and find an area where I want my principal flesh tone from. That could be around here, and just tap once. Now, if I zoom in on this, that area in the middle is where I sample my colors from. And the reason in the previous video I did a blur on this whole area is that the brush we used for pushing and pulling the paint around, well, it works, but it can leave a few streaks. So I applied the blur so I get a more even gradation of tone, so I don't get any stray streaks inside that little circle. Although having said that, what I tend to do is if I'm going to sample something, I will come to pretty much the middle of the circle, let go, and there is my color. Now, supposing I decided I wanted a principal shadow color and a highlight color. All right, well, let's go looking around for the shadow color. Let's come to my eraser again. And maybe somewhere around here, should we have some bluey shadows down there? And supposing I want a principal highlight color. Well, I can come up here and come looking for a principal highlight color. Should we make it fairly neutral around maybe there, for example? And okay, I've got my basic flesh tone. Now, if I want to come up, I can choose my principal highlight tone, but supposing I wanted maybe just a little bit more red or a little bit more of a neutral color, I can come up here, I can come and choose, you can see that the top color of my reticule, that's what that little gizmo is called, which I'm dragging around, the top color of that is giving me a slightly more peachy version of my highlight color, which I can then go away and use. But then if I want to come back to my principal highlight, just tap in the middle there and I've got my principal highlight. So this is what I was talking about. I don't have to draw a separate series of color swatches at the side so I can always pick the same color, because I've already got them inside these little circles that I've carved out of my cloud. So I can always choose them, but I can always choose variations around that area. So the best of both worlds. And so I was busy being pleased with myself, and then I thought, well, hang on a second. If you come to Procreate, and I discuss this on the Solid Foundations course, they've got color theory built into Procreate. If you come down to the bottom where I'm circling, come to Harmony, you have a whole load of different color theory built into Procreate. So I thought, well, hang on, I reckon I can use this. For example, let's come to our principal flesh tone. Then I'm going to come back up and let's choose, say, the first one, complementary. Well, if you look at this, The circle I am circling, that's the colour I've got selected. That circle on the other side is the complementary colour. This big circle, that is a colour wheel with all the colours laid around the outside, going from very intense on the outer bit to no colour at all right in the middle. That's just a neutral grey. And if you come here to the slide at the bottom, you can alter the dark to light values. So you've got your dark to light, your hue around the outside, and how intense that hue is as you go in towards the middle. That's how this colour wheel works. Let's come back and sample my flesh tone. So I've got warm flesh on the one side, and you've got a cool blue, its opposite or complementary colour on the other side. Now there's two bits of colour theory I would mention here. If you lay down two complementary colours next to each other, you're going to get a very striking colour combination, and often they will clash with each other. But the other reason you have complementary colours is if your main colour, that peachy flesh tone, if that's too strong, mixing in just a tiny bit of the complementary hue reduces the saturation of your main colour by a little bit. It's called breaking the colour or breaking the hue. And the reason for that in traditional painting is that often the colours you get from tubes are too vibrant, they're too saturated. You need to break them to get the kind of colours you see in nature, or for example, on a human face. So enough waffle, that's our complementary colour. And you can see it's kind of a blue moving towards cyan, all right? I used DC Picker Basic from the utility brushes to choose my main colours. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come to my paintbrush, but I am going to come down to utility brushes, and I've got this DC Complementary. Do you remember with DC Complementary, has two circles, the main colour and the complementary. Well, with this, if I come in close and you take a look, that is a circle with two notches on it to represent the complementary colours. And here's something, look, if you come to your wrench icon, make sure Preferences is chosen and come to Advanced Cursor Settings. I have mine set to the brush cursor visibility, show while hovering and show while painting, or show both. I've got mine set to show both. I have it also set to preview when it's hovering in my active colour. That means because I've selected my skin tone, like this, I now have my active colour selected, so I can compare that colour right next to the colour I want to choose for my complementary colour. How useful is that? So supposing I want something like that as my complementary colour. And the reason I use my eraser to choose my primary colours is that now I can compare that primary colour with my background tone, and if I move it around, look, see? I can compare. That's good news for me. I get to judge that value against the background. But with this, with my complementary colour, I get to compare my principal flesh tone with its complementary while I'm looking for it. But there's more. If I come back to my colours, I've got split complementary. Now this, instead of getting the opposite colour, I'm getting two versions of my complementary colour. I'm getting, in this case, a more cyan colour and a more purple colour. Again, if you refer to traditional painting, if you want to mix a vibrant orange, you will choose a warm yellow to mix with a red. If you choose a cool yellow to mix with a red, it won't be as vibrant. And it's a similar principle going on here. I have this warm peachy skin tone, and I get to mix that with the purple, which is a bit warmer, or the cyan, which is a bit cooler. That's the general principle behind split complementary. It gives you a tint or a flavour to, say, your shadow colours. Oh, look at this. DC split complementary, and this time the cursor has one notch at the bottom, two notches at the top, which are closer to each other, so you know that this is your code for whatever colour I'm going to pick is going to be the split complementary. So again, I've got my flesh tone chosen. Now, supposing I wanted that more greeny colour for my cooler split complementary, and I'll choose something a bit more neutral, maybe a little bit more blue. Actually, no, let's move around a little bit more. Show the principle in action. Let's try something there, a little bit more browny, a little bit warmer. So now I can see my split complementary colours. Let's push this a little bit further. The next thing, analogous, analogous, however you pronounce it, us. There's my principal flesh tone. To the either side of it, I've got a more greeny tone and a more red tone. The theory of that is you mix that greeny tone or that reddy tone with your flesh tone, you're going to get something which is going to be subtle but also works nicely. And you do a painting in this style, you're going to get a very consistent looking painting which can create a very consistent looking mood. All right. Oh, look at this. DC analogous, and this has 3 notches. So you know that when you look at this is going to be the analogous or analogous. Now, what were we talking about? Something a bit warmer there, something a bit cooler, maybe around there. But here's the nice thing. Supposing I want to do the same thing, but for the shadows, I want warmer shadows, I want cooler shadows. Well, look, if I sample my principal shadow tone, I go looking, there's my warmer colours, there's my cooler colours. And because I've painted this using my main shadow tone, I can look at all these different symbols on my colour cloud, and I know that the one I'm circling now is the warm tone for the shadow colours because the circle surrounding it is painted in the main shadow colour. Similarly, if I just circle the one I painted a couple of minutes ago, because the surround of it is painted using my main mid tone for the skin, I know that that is the analogous colour that I have chosen for the main skin tone. You want more? Okay, look, let's go to the top. Let's choose the highlight. Let's choose a warmer highlight. Say maybe around there. I can compare this tone I'm about to pick because my brush is the same colour as my main highlight tone. So maybe about there. And if I want the cooler version of it, maybe about there. Now with the analogous, I got here 2 different choices. But with this technique, why do I need to restrict myself to 2 different choices? Supposing I want to choose something which is a little bit further towards the reddish pinkish tone, maybe around there, so I can experiment a little bit more. Or I want something which is cooler, but a little bit darker, maybe around there. And once I've done this, if I decide I want to choose that colour there, but I want to play around with the hues around it, yes, I can do that. I can go searching. And that's a good point. What about the main tone for my lips, for example? Okay, come back to my eraser. Let's choose a main tone for my lips. Let's try maybe somewhere around here. And let's try a highlight colour, maybe around here. And I can repeat this. Whenever I see a solid erased circle, those are my principal tones. Whenever I see a circle like this, I know that is a complementary tone. And it's a complementary tone of the colour which is surrounding it. Triadic. Well, both triadic and tetradic, these are colour schemes which give you, well, in the case of triadic, you've got your reds, your greens, your blues, or your purples, your cyans, and your kind of yellowy greens. This gives a very strong colour combination, a very vibrant picture where you got to be careful because the colours can clash. Same thing with tetradic. Instead of 3 prime colours, you've got 4 prime colours. I won't bother putting them on here now, even though I do have the brushes for it, because that's not the direction I want to take this portrait in. But look at that. I've got my colour cloud. I can choose whatever colour I want. And you know what? It's starting to annoy me a little bit. I'm going to come back and I'm going to lock this. I'm going to come to blend blur. I thought maybe I'd try and get away with it, but I'm going to come back up to my active layer. I'm going to come to alpha lock. I'm going to choose my smudges DC blend blur. I'm going to come to this bit in here because this is why I made a point of doing that Gaussian blur towards the end of the previous video, precisely so I didn't get this slight streak, so I've got slight variance inside that little color circle. But again, as a general rule of thumb, when you're selecting stuff, try and select from the middle of that circle to minimize any risk of getting variations in tone. Now, if you wanted to choose something very precisely, let's come to our razor and come to DC Precise Pickup. I can come to choose, say, I want something just here, transparency on 100%, whatever brush size you want, tap once, come in, and the center of that crosshair, that's the precise color that I want. So there you go, the color cloud with precise areas of color. This has been a problem I've wanted to solve for years. I think I've solved it here. You can choose your precise colors. You don't have to put them off to one side. And if you do put them off to one side, then you don't know where the original colors came from. Well, this solves all of that. It also puts in a whole load of different color theories there. Complementary colors, split complementary colors, analogous colors, but you can add in more analogous colors on here than you can with the color picker that comes with Procreate. So I would call this a success, and I hope it gives you plenty of use. Now there are just two other brushes from the color picker from the utility brushes, and I will explain them in the next tutorial.